Lyra woke early the next morning. The smell of metal, tea, and sea breeze filled the small workshop outside. The streets of Karachi's lower ring were already alive. Vendors calling, drones buzzing overhead, neon signs blinking through the mist. Rafi was at his bench, soldering an old generator back to life. His hands moved fast and sure, but his eyes kept glancing at the girl sitting by the window. Lyra had washed and brushed her hair, which shimmered faintly like moonlight under the lamp. She wore one of Rafi's spare shirts, far too big for her small frame. She looked both strange and peaceful, an alien trying to understand the rhythm of human mornings. "You like tea?" Rafi asked, handing her a steaming cup. Lyra nodded. "It smells like comfort," she said softly. Her accent was clearer today, like her tongue had remembered how to shape words. Rafi chuckled. "Yeah, comfort and bad jokes. Both come free here." For the first few days, Lyra watched everything closely. She seemed fascinated by simple things: water boiling, birds on the wires, the way people shouted and laughed in the street. Yet every sudden noise made her flinch. Every shadow near the door made her hand go to her pendant. When she was alone, she would touch the crystal and whisper something under her breath. Like a prayer, sometimes a faint glow flickered inside it. Rafi pretended not to notice. He didn't want to scare her. He just let her be. One afternoon, a group of kids came by asking Rafi to fix their hoverboard. The thing was half melted and smelled like burnt plastic. Rafi laughed and said, "You didn't ride this through fire, did you?" The kids giggled. Lyra watched from the corner. When Rafi got stuck, she quietly stepped forward and pressed a button on the board's side. The lights flickered, the core realigned, and it lifted smoothly into the air. Rafi blinked. "How'd you—" Lyra shrugged. "It was simple logic," she said, trying to sound casual. But her cheeks turned pink. The kids cheered, and one said, "She's cool." "Is she your sister?" Rafi smiled. "Something like that." By the end of the week, everyone in the block knew about the quiet alien girl who could fix machines with her eyes closed. People brought more broken things, and Lyra fixed them with gentle focus. She never asked for payment. She just smiled when the devices hummed back to life, but not everyone smiled back. Rafi noticed unfamiliar faces near the street corners. Men pretending to shop while scanning the area. Drones hovered a bit too long near his door one night. His communication console pinged with an anonymous message. "Return the Oriole asset, and no harm comes to you." He read it twice, his chest tightening. He didn't tell Lyra. Instead, he reinforced the locks and added shielding to the windows. He wasn't rich, but he knew how to make things harder to find. That same night, the pendant activated by itself. Lyra gasped as a small light projection appeared above it, a rotating star map. Thousands of dots and lines formed a crest symbol. Glowing gold. Rafi stared in awe. "What is that?" Lyra shook her head. "It feels familiar, but I don't know why." The projection zoomed in until one bright point pulsed. Coordinates. Right over Earth's southern orbit. Lyra's voice trembled. "Someone is looking for me." Rafi frowned. "Someone or something." He turned off the lights and shut the map down. "We'll figure it out, kid," he said. Though he didn't sound sure the next morning, a visitor arrived, Dr. Halim, an old xenologist Rafi sometimes helped with field repairs. His hair was white, his eyes sharp. He examined the pendant carefully through his lens. "This is not just jewelry," he said. "This crest belongs to the Aurelian dynasty. Rulers of the Oriole cluster." Lyra froze, her hands trembled. "That name—" "Aurelian," she whispered. "I remember that from somewhere." Dr. Halim looked at Rafi with concern. "If she wears that crest, she's important. Very important." Rafi crossed his arms. "She's just a kid." "Not to the people hunting her," Halim warned. That evening, Lyra sat quietly while Rafi fixed an engine coil. She finally spoke. "You should let me go. They'll come for me and you'll be hurt." Rafi didn't look up. "You think I'd throw someone away because they're in danger?" "Not happening." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this kindness," he sighed. "Maybe not, but that's how we humans are. We give it anyway." A soft silence fell, broken only by the hum of the workshop lights. Hours later, a loud crash echoed outside. Rafi jumped to the window and saw shadows moving fast between the street lamps. Lyra's pendant began to glow wildly, warning her of danger. "Stay behind me," Rafi ordered. Grabbing a plasma wrench, the front door shook as someone tried to break it open. Rafi flipped a switch under the counter. activating the defense grid, a patchwork of wires, shock traps, and smoke emitters, built from scrap. It wasn't military gear, but it was human ingenuity. When the attackers finally broke through, the shop exploded in sparks and thick smoke. Rafi swung his wrench, hitting the first intruder's armor. Lyra ducked under the workbench and used her pendant to emit a blinding flash. The bounty hunters shouted, stumbling back. Rafi and Lyra ran out the back door into the narrow alley. Rain began to fall again, washing away the smoke and blood. Rafi's arm was bleeding from a cut. But he didn't slow down. "Keep running," he yelled. They reached the van, engines roaring to life. The headlights sliced through the storm. Lyra looked back and saw the hunters vanish into the smoke, but she knew they would return. As the city lights faded behind them, she whispered, "You should have left me." Rafi shook his head. "You're family now." Lyra pressed her hand over the pendant, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat somewhere inside. She knew Rafi's kindness had changed her fate forever. Far above them in orbit, a coded message left a stealth ship and flashed across the void toward the Oriole cluster. Air located, Earth confirmed, and deep in the stars, someone smiled coldly, preparing to reclaim what they thought was theirs. While on Earth, a human and an alien girl drove through the rain, two souls bound by choice, not blood, unaware that the next storm would decide the fate of two worlds. The night after the attack, Rafi parked the van deep inside the maze of Karachi's old shipyards. Rusted hulls towered above them like sleeping giants. Lightning flashed far off. The rain had stopped, but the smell of burnt metal still clung to the air. Lyra sat quietly in the back seat, her hands gripping the glowing pendant. Her golden eyes reflected the faint blue light from the dashboard. Rafi checked the scanners again. "No signal, we lost them," he said, but his voice was tight. He knew whoever sent those hunters would not stop so easily. Lyra looked at him with guilt in her eyes. "They came because of me," she whispered. "You should have left me." "Rafi," he turned toward her, tired but calm. "You think I leave people behind?" "No, kid, not me." For a moment, the only sound was the slow hum of the van. Outside, the waves hit the dock softly, like a heartbeat. When morning came, they hid the van under a collapsed cargo ramp. Rafi handed Lyra a piece of flatbread and some fruit. "Eat," he said. "You'll need energy." She nodded but didn't eat much. Her mind was elsewhere, memories flickering in pieces. Flashes of white halls, golden banners, a voice calling her name. Lyra Aurelian. After breakfast, Rafi went to meet Dr. Halim again. He found the old man in his lab surrounded by holograms and alien relics. "You didn't tell me she was royalty," Rafi said in a low voice. Halim frowned. "I wasn't sure until now. That pendant she carries, it's the crest of Aurelian. The royal family ruled the Oriole cluster for over 2 centuries, until the regent betrayed them." Rafi rubbed his face. "And now the regent's goons are chasing her here on Earth." "Yes," Halim said grimly. "If she's the true heir, she's worth more than any fleet. The regent will not allow her to live." Rafi looked at him for a long time. "Then we make sure she does." Back at the shipyard, Lyra had been exploring quietly. She found a broken cleaning drone and began fixing it. Her hands moved fast, memory guiding her. When Rafi returned, the drone hovered gently beside her, its lights blinking happily. She smiled. "Machines like to be treated kindly," she said. Rafi smiled back, but worry clouded his eyes. "Lyra, I need to tell you something." He sat beside her. "Dr. Halim confirmed it. You are part of something big, your pendant. It's the royal crest of your people." Lyra's eyes widened. "Royal?" She repeated softly. The word felt heavy. She didn't want it. She shook her head. "That can't be true. I don't even remember my family." Rafi placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe not yet, but you will." That night, Lyra dreamed of light and fire, of tall figures in silver armor bowing to a golden throne. A woman's voice whispered, "Run, my daughter, and live." She woke up gasping, the pendant glowing brightly against her chest. Rafi rushed to her side. "It's okay. It's just a dream." Lyra shook her head. "No, it was real. I saw my mother. She told me to run." Before Rafi could answer, alarms screamed from the van system. "They found us again," he muttered, grabbing his plasma wrench. He peered through the crack in the door. A dark vehicle hovered near the docks. "Lights scanning the area," Rafi whispered. "We can't stay. Move." He and Lyra slipped out through a service tunnel. The air smelled of salt and rust. The tunnel opened into an old warehouse filled with scrap ships. They hid behind an engine core as two bounty hunters entered, tall figures in black armor. One of them spoke in a harsh alien tone. The tracker was destroyed, but the signal reappeared briefly. The other replied, "She must be near, remember, the Regent wants her alive." Lyra's heart pounded. Raffi touched her arm, signaling her to stay quiet. The hunters moved closer, scanning the shadows. Then Lyra noticed something. One of the ships nearby still had its defense turrets powered. She whispered, "I can activate it." Raffi hesitated. "Can you do it quietly?" She nodded. Her fingers tapped the small wrist device Raffi had given her earlier. She rerouted power through the rusted systems. Sparks danced along the ship's hull. The first hunter turned at the sound. What was that? Before he could react, the turret came alive, firing a warning burst that sent both of them diving for cover. Smoke filled the air. Raffi grabbed Lyra's hand, and they ran toward the back exit. They escaped through a crack in the wall just as explosions tore through the warehouse. The old ship collapsed in flames. The hunters shouted into their comms. But Raffi and Lyra were already gone, racing through the storm-soaked alleys. When they reached the open street, Lyra stumbled, exhausted. Raffi caught her before she fell. "You did good, kid," he said. "Real good," Lyra smiled weakly. "I just followed the wires." They hid in an abandoned subway station that night. The dim lights flickered as trains groaned somewhere far above. Raffi wrapped his coat around her shoulders. "Rest, you've earned it." Lyra looked at him, eyes soft. "Why do you help me so much?" she asked. "You could have left me many times." Raffi leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Because once someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. I owe that to the universe," she nodded slowly, understanding a little more about humans. "You're strange people," she said. Raffi chuckled. "Yeah, we get that a lot." The next day, they were visited by a surprise. A group of local workers who had seen the attack came quietly to the station, carrying food and spare parts. "We saw what those soldiers did," one man said. "You're not alone, brother." Lyra stared at them, moved. "You would risk yourselves for us?" The man grinned. "That's what humans do, miss. We stand with those who need standing with." Raffi felt pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best, ordinary people facing the impossible together. He looked at Lyra and said, "See, you're one of us now." As the workers helped repair the van, Lyra stepped aside and touched her pendant again. It hummed softly, showing her a faint image of stars forming a path. "They're still looking for me," she murmured. Raffi joined her. "Then we'll make sure they find someone ready to fight." For the first time, Lyra didn't feel afraid, she felt determined. The memories that haunted her no longer made her small. They made her strong. That night, the group shared bread and laughter around a small heater, humans and an alien girl under the same flickering light somewhere far above. The Regent's fleet was already plotting their next move, but on this broken Earth, a new kind of resistance had begun, born from kindness, courage, and a promise between a man and the lost princess he refused to abandon. The sky above Karachi burned orange as the evening traffic of ships crossed over the sea. Thousands of lights blinked in the smoggy air like falling stars. Down below, Raffi's old van raced through the crowded streets, weaving between trucks, police drones, and market stalls. Lyra sat beside him, clutching her glowing pendant. Her golden eyes watched every movement outside. She could feel the tension in the air. The hunters were close again. Raffi's hands gripped the steering wheel. "Hold tight," he said. The van shot down a narrow service road, metal grating echoing beneath the tires. Behind them, two dark hoverbikes appeared. Chasing hard, energy bolts flashed through the night, lighting up the rain-soaked road. Sparks flew as one hit the back of the van. Lyra gasped. "They found us again." Raffi gritted his teeth. "Then let's make them regret it." He flipped a switch on the dashboard, releasing a cloud of magnetic dust behind them. The bike's sensors jammed instantly, and one crashed into a wall of shipping crates. They turned off the main road, speeding into the undercity. Here the lights were dimmer, the air heavy with smoke. Raffi slowed the van near an old market tunnel. "We can't run forever," he said. "We need proof, something to show people who you really are." Lyra touched her pendant. "You mean tell the world?" Raffi nodded. "Yeah, if they know you're the rightful heir, maybe someone will help us instead of hunting us." For a moment, she hesitated, remembering the fear in her dreams, the betrayal, the fire, but then she looked at him and said, "Let's do it." They drove to an abandoned broadcast tower near Clifton Bay. The old place had been silent for years, used now only by smugglers and broken dreams. Raffi connected his portable uplink to the tower's console. Sparks jumped as the power core groaned back to life. Once we send this, everyone will know, Raffi warned. Even the Regent, Lyra smiled faintly. Then let him know I'm alive. She held her pendant close. The crystal shone brighter than ever, projecting the royal crest into the air, golden rays forming a circle around her. Her voice calm and steady, carried through the static as Raffi began recording. To all Oriel citizens and to every world that values truth, she said, I am Lyra Aurelian, daughter of Queen Ceres, survivor of the Purge, and rightful heir to the Oriel throne. Her message went live across hundreds of channels. The crest shimmered behind her as she spoke of peace, justice, and unity of the lies spread by the regent who had seized power. When it ended, the signal bounced across the net. Unstoppable, unfiltered, humans began sharing it instantly. Alien princess found on Earth. The feeds blazed, Raffi exhaled. It's done. But even before they could celebrate, his scanner beeped. They're already tracing us. Within minutes, the sound of engines filled the night, not bounty hunters this time, but local police and press drones. The streets around the tower erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted, Is it true? Is she the princess? People gathered, trying to glimpse the alien girl. Raffi pulled Lyra's hood over her head and guided her back to the van. Time to move again, he said. You're famous now. Lyra gave a small smile. It feels strange being seen. They raced toward the coast road. The city glowed behind them like a storm of lights, but as they neared the water, Raffi noticed another vehicle following them. Sleek, black and silent, it didn't belong to the police. That's not good, he muttered. They turned into the desert beyond the city where the sand stretched endlessly. A safe house waited there, Halim's contact, a man named Darren who claimed to be part of a resistance network. When they arrived, the air smelled of fuel and salt. Darren greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You must be the girl everyone's talking about, he said. And the human who saved her. Raffi didn't like his tone. But they were out of options. Inside the hangar, a small shuttle was ready, sleek and silver. This can take you off-world, Darren said. Straight to Oriel loyalists who'll protect you. Lyra looked hopeful. Is it safe? Darren nodded. Safer than staying here. While Raffi inspected the engines, Lyra walked around the shuttle. Her pendant flickered uncertainly. Something's wrong, she whispered. Raffi turned, but before he could react, a squad of armed soldiers stepped out of the shadows. Darren raised his hands mockingly. Sorry, friends, business is business. The Regent pays better than loyalty. Raffi pulled his plasma wrench. You sold us out? Darren smirked. Nothing personal, just survival. Lyra's eyes burned with fury. She stepped in front of Raffi. You will not take me, she said. Her voice echoed with strange power. For a second, everyone froze. Then chaos erupted. Raffi threw a smoke grenade. Blinding the soldiers, he grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward the back exit. Lasers scorched the walls around them. The hangar filled with heat and dust. Lyra tripped, her pendant slipping from her neck. Raffi caught it midair, pressing it into her hand. Don't lose this, he said. Outside, the desert wind howled. They ran behind an old fuel tank, bullets hitting the sand. Raffi peeked over the edge and spotted a control terminal. He whispered, If I trigger the fuel valves, this whole place will blow. Lyra looked at him in horror. You'll be caught in it. Raffi grinned. Only if I'm slow. She hesitated, then nodded. I trust you. Raffi sprinted to the console, sparks flying as he bypassed the system. Come on, he muttered. Behind him, Darren shouted orders. Stop them! The soldiers advanced, but Lyra stood firm, her pendant pulsing bright. The symbol projected into the air again. This time not just light, but energy. It expanded outward like a wave, knocking the attackers off their feet. Raffi hit the final switch. Run! He yelled. He and Lyra dashed toward the dunes as the hangar exploded behind them. A wall of fire lit the sky, turning night into day. The blast threw sand and debris for miles. They fell to the ground, coughing. Raffi's arm bleeding, Lyra crawled to him. You're hurt, she said, tears in her eyes. He smiled weakly. Just a scratch. His voice was shaky but calm. You did great back there, princess. Lyra looked at him, pain and pride mixing in her gaze. Don't call me that, she whispered. Not until I've earned it. From the top of the dunes, they could see the burning wreck of the hangar. The stars above shimmered in silence. Lyra touched her pendant again, its glow now steady. We can't run anymore, she said. It's time to fight back. Raffi nodded. Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget. And as the flames behind them faded into the dark horizon, the girl who had once been lost in a cargo crate and the man who had chosen to protect her began their journey toward destiny, unaware that their defiance had already sparked something new across both worlds, a hope that even empires could not extinguish. The desert stretched endlessly under a sky filled with cold stars. The air was quiet except for the wind pushing waves of sand around the two figures walking alone. Raffi and Lyra had been moving for hours, the fire from the destroyed hangar now just a faint glow behind them. Raffi's arm was bleeding through his shirt, but he didn't slow down. Lyra tried to help him walk, her small hand gripping his tightly. You should rest, she said. Raffi shook his head. Not yet. We need distance first. His voice was hoarse but steady. They found an abandoned service outpost built into the rocks. The solar panels were half buried in sand. Inside, they found dusty chairs, empty crates, and a cracked water tank. Raffi collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Lyra used the first aid kit from the van to clean his wound. Her fingers trembled, but she did it carefully. You're getting good at this, Raffi said with a faint grin. She smiled weakly. I learned from the best. When the sun rose, the desert turned gold. Raffi was still asleep. Lyra stepped outside, her pendant glowing softly. She stared at the horizon where two suns were rising, the real one, and the faint reflection from orbiting satellites. She whispered, If my people are watching, I hope they see I'm still alive, but they were not alone. A shadow moved among the dunes, a small drone blinking red. Someone was tracking them again a few hours later. A sand cruiser approached from the west, flying the symbol of a neutral trade guild. Raffi and Lyra watched carefully as it landed. 3 people stepped out, 2 armed guards and a woman with a scar across her cheek. She introduced herself as Mara. Dr. Halim sent me, she said. He's alive. And he told me to find you. Raffi didn't trust easily, but Halim's name gave him hope. Mara offered them food and fresh water. We can take you to a safe zone, she said. There's a camp of humans and Oriole loyalists waiting. Lyra hesitated, her instincts whispering caution. But Raffi needed medical help and they had no transport. All right, he said finally, we'll go. The sand cruiser flew low over the dunes, its engines humming softly. Lyra sat near the window watching the horizon. Mara joined her. You really are her, aren't you? She asked quietly. The lost princess. Lyra didn't answer, just looked at her hands. Maybe I was once, she said. Now I'm just trying to survive. They traveled for hours until night fell again. The stars seemed sharper here. Raffi dozed off for a while. The hum of the engines was almost calming until suddenly an alarm flashed red across the dashboard. Lyra turned. What's happening? Mara's expression changed, her voice too calm. Nothing to worry about, she said. Just a small detour, but Raffi was awake now. His instincts screamed danger. He saw the coordinates on the screen. They weren't heading to any safe zone. They were going straight toward a beacon signal used by the Regent's patrols. He grabbed Mara's wrist. You're not taking us to allies, are you? Her cold smile returned. Sorry, hero. The bounty for you both is worth more than loyalty. The guards raised their weapons. But Raffi was faster. He slammed a wrench into one man's arm, sending his blaster flying. Lyra ducked and kicked the other guard's knee. Her pendant flared bright, releasing a burst of energy that shorted the cruiser's control system. The ship spiraled out of control, crashing hard into the sand. The cabin filled with smoke. Raffi crawled out coughing. Pulling Lyra with him, Mara shouted orders, but her men were down. Raffi turned toward the wreckage. We can't let her call them. Lyra looked around and saw nearby fuel drums cracked open from the crash. If I overload them, it'll destroy the beacon, she said. Raffi nodded. Do it, but be quick. She ran toward the beacon tower beside the crash site. Her pendant pulsed brighter, connecting with the alien tech inside the beacon. Streams of data appeared in her mind. Coded messages, maps, orders from the Regent himself. Her breath caught as she read one line. Eliminate all witnesses on Earth, no exceptions. Her hands shook, but she focused. She redirected the energy from her pendant into the beacon's power core. The tower began to glow red, heating up like a volcano about to erupt. Raffi shouted, "Lyra, it's going to blow." "I can't stop it now," she yelled back, "but I can make it count." She ran to him as the beacon exploded behind them. The blast threw them forward into the sand. The sound rolled through the desert like thunder. When Raffi opened his eyes, his ears rang, his arm hurt. But Lyra was alive beside him, her pendant cracked but still glowing faintly. He pulled her close. "You all right?" She nodded weakly. "I think so." Then she looked at him, eyes wide with guilt. "I shouldn't have trusted her." "It's my fault you're hurt again," he smiled tiredly. "If I didn't trust anyone, I'd never have met you." She looked at him silently for a moment, then said softly, "You're the strangest human I've ever met." Raffi laughed weakly. "You haven't met enough of us yet." They spent the next day hiding in an old mining shelter they found buried under the dunes. The walls were covered with carvings left by workers long gone. Raffi rested while Lyra tinkered with broken transmitters she found. She used parts from the cruiser's wreckage to create a short-range comm signal. When it finally connected, Dr. Halim's voice crackled through. "Raffi, Lyra!" "Thank the stars you're alive," Raffi smiled. "Barely, Halim. You've got to stop sending us friends who like money more than loyalty." The old man chuckled. "You'll have better company soon. The Loyalists are preparing to send ships from orbit. You need to reach the canyon base at Al-Khobar." "I'll send coordinates." Lyra listened, hope flickering in her heart. "So there are still people who believe in my family?" "Yes," Halim said firmly. "And they're ready to fight back." That night, as Raffi slept, Lyra sat near the cave's entrance watching the stars. Her pendant pulsed softly, showing faint images of her mother's face and the royal crest glowing bright. She whispered, "I won't run anymore. I promise." A faint wind carried her words into the dark. Somewhere beyond those stars, 1,000 people began whispering the same name again. Princess Lyra Aurelion. The heir had survived, and she was no longer just hiding by morning. Raffi woke to find Lyra already standing outside, her hair blowing in the desert wind. "You're up early," he said. She looked back with calm determination. "It's time to go home." Raffi smiled proudly. "Then let's show your people what happens when they mess with Earth." And as they started their journey toward the canyon base, the desert sun rose behind them like a promise of war and freedom. Lyra no longer looked like a lost girl. She looked like a leader, and Raffi, limping but smiling, walked beside her as if he had always known this was where he was meant to be. The road to Al-Khobar Canyon was long, dry, and endless. The desert stretched like a golden ocean under the burning sun. Raffi drove the repaired sand cruiser while Lyra watched the horizon. Her pendant was cracked but still glowing faintly. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, guiding them toward something she could not yet see. For days they traveled across dunes and stone ridges, stopping only to rest under the shade of old solar panels or half-buried towers. The radio stayed silent most of the time, but sometimes they picked up fragments of human news. Alien princess broadcast. Rebellion in the Oriole cluster. Regent forces mobilizing. Every message made Lyra's chest tighten. Her name was spreading fast. One night, when they stopped beside a cliff to rest, Raffi sat on the sand fixing his blaster. Lyra looked up at the stars. "Those are my people's worlds," she said softly. "But they don't feel like home anymore." Raffi glanced at her. "Home isn't always where you're born, kid. It's where someone waits for you." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe Earth is my home now," Raffi chuckled. "Careful. Humans might take that seriously." The next morning they reached the canyon. Huge rock walls surrounded a narrow valley where lights flickered below. Old mining tunnels had been turned into a base. Human engineers, alien refugees, and loyal Oriole soldiers worked side by side. When the guards saw Lyra's crest, they let them in without question. Dr. Halim was waiting at the entrance, his face lit with relief when he saw them. "You made it," he said. "The Loyalists are ready to strike. We've gathered enough proof from your broadcast to expose the Regent." Lyra smiled but noticed Raffi's tired face. He was still bleeding from his arm. "He needs help first," she said quickly. Halim nodded and called the medics while Raffi rested. Lyra met the leaders of the resistance. They were a mix of humans and Orioles, scientists, pilots, and soldiers who had lost everything to the Regent's rule. One of them, Captain Rian, bowed before her. "Your Highness, if we can transmit your full claim to the Royal Network, every loyal fleet will rise." Lyra looked uncertain. "And if I fail?" Rian said simply. "Then we fall with honor." That night, the base came alive with activity. Engineers worked to repair the old satellite array hidden in the canyon cliffs. It would allow Lyra's signal to reach every Oriole colony. Halim explained the plan. Once the message goes out, we'll expose the regent's crimes, his purges, his secret deals, his lies. The people will see the truth. Lyra stood beside the control console. And what if he answers with violence? Rafi, now bandaged but awake, said, Then he'll learn what humans do when someone threatens family. The words made her smile. For the first time she felt strength, not just from her bloodline, but from the people around her, from Rafi's stubborn courage and the human spirit that refused to bow when everything was ready. Lyra stepped onto the small platform in front of the transmitter. Her voice carried through the halls. My name is Lyra Aurelian, rightful heir to the Oriole crown. The regent has lied to you all. He destroyed our cities, silenced our people, and now seeks to bring war to Earth, but I will not let more worlds suffer. As she spoke, Rafi activated the transmitter. A beam of golden light shot into the sky, reaching beyond the atmosphere, spreading across the stars. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then messages began flooding in. Confirmed royal code. Long live the true heir. Fleet preparing to defect. The base erupted with cheers. Humans and aliens hugged each other. The rebellion had begun, but the joy did not last long. The radar alarm blared suddenly. A massive object appeared in orbit, one of the regent's war cruisers. Its shadow passed over the canyon like a storm. Halim's voice cracked. He's here, he's sending a strike team to Earth. Rafi slammed his fist against the table. We're not ready for a space war. Lyra stood tall, her pendant glowing bright again. Then we fight with what we have. The Loyalists scrambled to defensive positions. Human engineers mounted rail cannons on the cliffs. Pilots prepared their small fighters. Rafi took command of the ground defenses, barking orders like an old soldier. Aim for the landing pods. Don't waste shots. Moments later, fire rained from the sky. The first wave of drones descended, blazing red in the darkness. The ground shook with explosions. Rafi manned a turret. Firing bursts of plasma at incoming targets, Lyra stood beside him, using her pendant to create energy shields that blocked some of the blasts. Through the smoke and chaos, Lyra's heart raced, every scream. Every explosion reminded her of her past, the night her world fell. But this time she didn't run. This time she fought. The battle raged for hours. Then a deep voice echoed from the comms, cold and cruel. You think you can stand against me, little girl? It was the regent himself. His war cruiser loomed above the canyon. Surrender. And I will spare this world. Lyra took the microphone. You spared nothing, not even your own people, if you want me. Come down and face me yourself, the regent laughed. As you wish. Moments later, a bright beam cut through the clouds. A shuttle descended, landing near the canyon's edge. Soldiers poured out, armored and armed. Rafi wiped sweat from his face. He's coming personally? He must be desperate. Lyra's voice was steady. Good. Desperation makes tyrants weak. When the regent appeared, he was tall and imposing. His armor black as night, his eyes cold as ice. You should have stayed hidden, child, he said. Lyra stepped forward unarmed. And you should have stayed loyal. He raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Rafi's team attacked from the cliffs. Explosions lighting up the night. The regent turned furious, but Lyra held her ground. Her pendant shone like a small sun. Enough blood, she shouted, end this now. The pendant flared, sending out a wave of light that rippled through the battlefield. The soldiers froze, their weapons shaking. For a moment, everyone stood still. Then something unexpected happened. The regent's own generals dropped their guns. One of them shouted, "We follow the true heir." Confusion spread through the ranks. The regent roared in rage, firing wildly. Rafi tackled him from behind, knocking his blaster away. The two struggled on the ground until Lyra stepped closer. Her voice calm. It's over. She held up the pendant, and the light enveloped the regent completely. His armor shattered, and he fell silent. The battle ended with the sound of the wind sweeping through the canyon. Lyra looked at Rafi, tears mixing with dust on her face. We did it. He nodded, smiling despite the bruises. Told you humans don't quit. Around them. Soldiers and civilians cheered. The dawn broke over the canyon, painting everything in gold. The war for truth was won. But the journey home was still ahead. Lyra looked up at the sky and whispered, Mother, I'm coming back, and high above Earth. The fleets of the loyal Orioles turned toward home. following the call of their true princess while a single human stood beside her, proud, ready for whatever came next. The sun rose slowly over the canyon, spreading golden light across the dust and metal ruins of the night's battle. Smoke drifted from broken machines, and the air still smelled of ozone and victory. The ground was covered with fragments of weapons, armor, and hopes, both shattered and reborn. Lyra stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind lifting her silver hair as she watched the Oriole banners rise again above the canyon. She had dreamed of this day since the first time she remembered her name. Now it had come true, but it didn't feel like a fairy tale. It felt real. Heavy, earned, and alive, Raffi stood beside her, his arm bandaged, his shirt torn. He looked exhausted, but a small, proud smile stayed on his face. "You did it, kid," he said softly. "You took back your name." Lyra turned to him, her golden eyes warm. "We did it, Raffi. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Below them, humans and Orioles worked together to rebuild the base. Engineers repaired the transmitters, soldiers cleared debris, and medics moved among the wounded. The rebellion had become an alliance now, not just between species, but between hearts. Dr. Halim came running up the slope holding a tablet. The message spread across the cluster. "Entire fleets are surrendering. The regent's rule has collapsed. They're calling you the Dawn Princess." Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't want titles," she said, "just peace." Halim nodded. "Peace needs someone to lead it." A transport ship arrived soon after, sleek in silver with the royal crest glowing proudly on its hull. Loyal Oriole captain stepped out and knelt before Lyra. "Your Highness," one said, "the throne awaits your return." "The people are ready." Lyra looked at Raffi. Her heart felt torn between duty and home. "If I go," she said quietly, "I'll have to leave Earth." Raffi crossed his arms. "That's your world, your family's legacy." She shook her head. "But Earth gave me something my world never did, freedom to choose who I want to be." The captains waited respectfully. Giving her time, finally, Lyra straightened. "I will return to Oriole," she said, "but not to rule from a throne of glass. I will rebuild it to stand beside Earth, not above it." The soldiers nodded, their faces filled with pride. Before she boarded, Lyra turned to Raffi again. "Come with me," she said softly. "I want you there. Humans and Orioles must stand together. You've earned your place among my people." Raffi laughed lightly. "Me? I fix machines, not empires." She stepped closer, her voice steady. "You fix more than machines, you fix hearts." "You fixed mine." Raffi looked away, embarrassed. "You always know how to make a guy blush, princess." She smiled. "You always call me that when you're trying not to say goodbye." He sighed deeply, looking around at the canyon, at the humans waving, at the sunrise painting the desert gold. He had never left Earth before, never looked beyond its sky. But something inside him told him that his place was no longer limited to one planet. "All right," he said finally. "Let's see what your stars look like up close." Cheers broke out as they boarded the ship. The engines roared, lifting sand and light into the air. The loyal fleet rose to meet them, thousands of ships gleaming against the morning sky. For the first time in generations, Oriole and Earth ships flew together. As they broke through the clouds, Lyra looked down at the blue world below. "Earth will always be my second home," she whispered. "The place where I learned what courage means." Raffi leaned beside her. "Just don't forget to visit once in a while." "I'll bring gifts," she said, smiling. "Make sure it's not another war," he joked, and she laughed for the first time in days. When they reached the orbit of the Oriole cluster, the view took Raffi's breath away. Dozens of golden worlds circled two bright suns, massive cities floating above them like jewels, but many were scarred from battle, their beauty dimmed by war. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "This is my home," she said softly, broken, but still alive. The royal palace still stood on the central world of Aurelian Prime. Though half its towers were damaged, crowds filled the skies and floating platforms, waiting to see their princess return. When Lyra stepped out of the ship, they knelt in silence. Raffi followed behind her. Feeling out of place but proud, an elder approached, carrying the royal seal. "By ancient law, we recognize the return of the true heir," he said. "Princess Lyra Aurelian, do you accept the crown?" Lyra looked at the crown, shimmering gold and crystal. She took a deep breath. "I accept," she said, "but I will wear it not to rule, but to serve." The crowd erupted in cheers, but she raised her hand. "This victory belongs not only to me or my people, she said loudly. It belongs to the humans who fought beside us, to the courage that lives in every heart that chooses kindness over fear. She turned to Raffi, and to one human who taught me what family truly means. Raffi tried to hide his smile as the crowd clapped and bowed. One of the Oriole generals stepped forward. We have a new title for you, Earthling, Kin Guardian of the Crown. Protector of both worlds, Raffi blinked. That sounds official, Lyra grinned. It is, so get used to it. Days later, the throne room shone again with light and laughter. Human diplomats walked side by side with Oriole envoys. Building the foundation of a new alliance, Raffi sat at the edge of the grand hall, watching Lyra handle the ceremony with grace. She no longer looked like the frightened girl he had found in a cargo crate. She looked like a leader who had learned from pain, love, and trust. When the ceremony ended, Lyra found Raffi leaning on a column, looking at the stars through the glass ceiling. You missed the noise of the workshop? She asked. He smiled. Maybe a little, but I think I like this view better. She stood beside him. You know, I could still use a mechanic in the Royal Fleet, he laughed. Only if the pay's good, she pretended to think. You get free tea and unlimited stars. Deal, he said, shaking her hand. They stood in silence for a while, watching the twin suns set over Aurelian Prime. The palace lights reflected in their eyes. We did it, didn't we? Lyra whispered. Raffi nodded. Yeah, we really did. Her pendant glowed softly again, this time warm and steady. She placed it on the table beside them. It's home now, she said. It doesn't need to call for help anymore. Outside, fireworks burst across the alien sky. Humans and Orioles celebrated together for the first time. Raffi raised his cup of spiced tea and said, To new worlds and old promises. Lyra smiled and touched her cup to his. To family, and as the stars shimmered above, the lost princess who became a queen, and the mechanic who became her guardian watched over two worlds finally united. Not by fear or conquest, but by trust, courage, and the simple kindness that had started it all on one rainy night in a forgotten dock on Earth.